So this is part two of the project. In part two, the client comes back to you telling you that they are trying out a new layout for their chips in their stores. So they're looking basically to see how it's performed over this period of time compared to stores that didn't have this new layout. The trial stores they already give you, so it's stores 76, 86, and 88. The trial period went from February 2019 to the end of April 2019. So basically, your job here is to select a group of control stores. So control store for each trial store, so one for one, and to base it off on some kind of measures, and then to assess the trial store performance versus the control store performance. And they also go into what visuals you can do to see if there was any significant differences. They give you some ideas of what you could do, like total sales revenue, total number of customers, average number of transactions per customer, things like that. But you kind of have what's good about this project to kind of give you a free reign to make your own ideas, your own measures and stuff of what you can gauge it by. So for the control stores, the methodology, I use the Pearson's correlation test and the total sales volume to compare the trial stores before the trial period with the control stores before the trial period. So the trial period started in February, so I'm looking at their sales history from July to the end of January and comparing the trial stores to the control stores to see how closely they performed, so I can pick a control store based on that information. So getting into it, again, importing the same packages, pandas, numpy, then I matplotlib and scipy stats, and then loaded into CSV. Noticed there was some columns that came over that I didn't want, so I removed those. Created a new date column, just month year, the month and year. They didn't want a daily. They didn't want a daily comparison. They wanted a whole month to month comparison. So I got rid of the dates and just lumped it into the month and year. And then after creating that, I separated it out by total sales, grouped it by the store number and the month and year, and looked at the total sales to be able to find out what control stores are relatively close to each other with the trial stores based on total sales. So then I pulled out the info for the trial stores. So the trial stores during this period, their sales numbers from July 2018 to January 2019. Here you can see I have each store number and the sales amount that they did during this period. And then it's basically me exploring, looking first at total sales during the periods to see what stores come close sales wise. So this graph is a little bit messy, but you can see here, if you follow the red, that's the trial store. And that was its sales history over this period of time. And since looking at it, what comes close is store 233, kind of close. 255 is not really that close, but I would say 233 would probably be the closest, the muddish color yellow. But since this is so messy, the Pearson's comes in handy for this. So I did the Pearson's correlation test, and 233 had the highest correlation at 0.90. And then graphing that to see what it looks like during that period. As you can see, it's very similar trending-wise. Trending-wise, they both decline, and then they both spike up, and then decline again. So this is pretty close, and it's pretty close when it comes to total sales amount. So I decided to use control store 233 for the trial store 77 for its comparison. So the trial store did 1699 in total sales, and the control store did 1659. So pretty close in total sales. Correlation wise, they're very correlated. They have the same pattern, trend pattern with sales. So that basically made me choose store 233. And then I was moving forward to look for store 86, and the top 10 closest in total sales amounts for that store. Graphed it. It's messy again, obviously, because it's just 10 stores in one chart. But if you could kind of follow along with me, it's this purple line right here, 86. So it kind of goes like this. So this gray comes pretty close pattern wise. But when you look at the correlations, the Pearson correlations, none of them really come close. The closest correlation is 0.52, which is a bit low. So I decided to keep looking above. I was taking originally 5 below, 5 above the trial store in total sales. So now I'm grabbing the top 10 above it of store 86. So then again, I threw it into a pivot table, looked at the sales, and threw it into Pearson's correlation, looked at it again. 155 came out the highest correlation wise at 0.87. And then just graphing those two stores, as you can see, the sales trend follows almost a similar pattern. This one ovals out a little bit more around September and December. This one's more of a spike and a gradual decline over time, but pretty close sales pattern. So I decided to go with store 155 for trial store 86. And then moving on, as you can see, the correlation 0.87. The top one, 0.31, is just that sales were just too low. You can see here that the sales is just nowhere comparable to the trial store. 155 came the closest for total sales amount. So if we use the next one below it, store 240, that matches correlation wise with the Pearson's correlation. I had 0.82. As you can see, the total sales are just much lower. In this graph, it just fits much better store 155. So I concluded to go with store 155 to match with trial store 86. And then moved on, same thing with trial store 88, did the same methodology, looking at the top sales, looking at the correlations, plotting it. I did the correlations first on this one. Based on the correlations, as you can see, again, we ran into an issue where none of the stores come close to sales volume wise. Top 10 correlated doesn't come close. If you do the total sales, as you can see, it's a bit messy again. So with this one, basically, I ended up going to look, instead of the correlations, I looked at the top 10 total sales. So this one, store 88, is 9,383 in total sales. So that's basically the top end. As you see here, that's the top end of the total sales by store number. So you have store 237 that comes close to it, and 226, store 165. So the correlations weren't really going to work for this. So I was looking at the total sales. And as again, you can see it's like really messy again. So with this, I had to eliminate a few at a time to get a better picture. So this is like all 10 smashed in. I eliminated a few, brought it down a bunch. So you can see 88 is right here in the red. Follows this kind of pattern. You can see 237 comes kind of close to that pattern. And just kept narrowing it down, And here you can see that with the last three, 237, 199, and then the trial store 88, that store 237 basically comes the closest with the sales trend, with the sales pattern, with the total sales pattern. So I ended up going with this store, even though its correlation was really low. And then I basically started to review each trial store and its control store to see for how they performed. So sales during the trial period, trial store 77 and 230, and the control store 233. So you could see how the trial store just increased and slight decrease in April, while the control store just continually decreased. Some preliminary figures here: total sales, product quantity, repeat customers, total customers, comparing the control store to the trial store. Again, doing the same thing for the next set of trial and control stores. Looking at the total sales, as you can see, the trial store increases from February to March, and then the end of April it declines. From March to April it declines. And kind of the reverse for control store 155. And then again, some quick stats: total sales, product quantity, repeat customers, total customers, in a little table for myself to keep the information all notated there. And then did the same thing for the last set of stores, the trial store 88 and control store 237. Looking at the total sales again, see here the control store dips from February to March, and then March to April it declines slightly again, but not as much of a drastic decline. And here in the trial store we can see it increases and then slightly decreases. So similar pattern, but totally on different sides of the spectrum when it comes to sales. And then total sales, product quantity, repeat customer, again, all the same information for those set of stores. Then this is looking at product quantity. Just not much difference graph-wise versus total sales. This one was probably the most difference, as this is just a straight, almost linear decline. And then looking at the average products per customer during the trial period. So as we can see here, the first group, second group, and third group of stores. So the trial store 88 versus 237, 88 had more products per customer sold. Same thing with the trial store 86, and trial store 77 performed slightly less than 233. So my conclusion here, that overall, based on all the information I gathered, overall the trial stores were outperforming the control stores. Only very few categories in the last set, trial 77 versus control 233, was the control store actually beating out the trial store, but not many categories. Most of it, the trial stores were outperforming the control stores. So that was that for part 2. That concluded part 2. And then part 3, they wanted you to make a PowerPoint presentation. So to give to the supermarket company. So this is the PowerPoint. These first 2 slides were the layout was given by them, but in the first 2 slides, because it's basically about their company information. And then I take over from here, overview of chip sales and key information. So it starts off with just the annual snapshot of the total sales trend for the past year. As we can see, There's some like seasonality spikes here. Seems like in the beginning or deep into winter, January, February, there's a decent decline in chip sales. Pretty steady. Increases around the holidays, November and December, drops again, and then spikes back up in the springtime, decreases a little bit, and then starts to incline again. But the overall trend is the sales of chips is starting to decline slightly. So that helps tie into the new layout. I think the new layout would help this and kind of boost sales back up. But that's like the later part of the presentation. This is based on the total, so the customer affluence and its effect on consumer buying. Slide on that. It doesn't seem like there's much of an impact. But mainstream customers made the most chip purchases, and budget customers came in second. Influence doesn't seem to impact it huge. It's kind of they're all roughly spend amount around the same, and average quantity purchased per customer around the same. Brands that they prefer are around the same. Nothing really stands out. There's more mainstream customers, so that's why there's more mainstream customer purchases and quantity, but quantity is the same. But the total sales number, obviously, since there's more of them, there's more purchases. This is by life stage. So life stage and its proportion of premium customers. So here it's breaking it out how many people are in each. So you got here you got the budget, the mainstream, the premium, the population of each. In the retirement category, the old single category, all broken out for to be spoken about during a presentation. And that basically concludes the initial part 1 analysis. The part 2 of the trial stores. As you can see here, the trial stores versus control store data shows that the trial stores increased the sales from February and slightly declines in April. But overall, it's the trial stores are outperforming the control stores. As you can see, control store declines, and then it does a slight decline again. Whereas the trial stores increase and then start to decline again. But it's expected when introducing a new layout that a new layout would increase sales. Customers might see brands or chips that they haven't noticed before, and it would spike sales, and then there might be some leveling off. But as long as it maintains a higher sales volume, then I would say it's a success. And the next slide is the trial stores versus the control stores and the transactions, the total sales transactions, and how it looks. And so here we can see that the trial stores are every time are outperforming their control stores. Here's it's broken down, but trial store performance before and after. So you got the before in the gray, you got the trial period in the color purple, and then you got the after in green here. So we can see with trial store 77, the sales were pretty, it's following like pretty much the same pattern. And then here it increases above, almost reaching its peak, probably the second highest amount of sales, and then it decreases in April. But then if you look after the trial period, the sales have maintained a high level, much more higher than the period from before the trial period. So it's maintained a higher sales amount, even though it's declining in the final month of June. It's still above the average. If you look at it across, if this was the average line, 250, it's sitting above the average. So this is actually interesting. This would give me the idea that purchasing habits of the customers were impacted, and their purchasing habits changed, and they're purchasing at higher volumes now. Maybe they discovered more chips that they like or whatnot. And then this is The next one is trial store 86. We can see here the before, big dip in August, kind of a smooth like semicircle performance here, and then an increase during the trial period, spike during the trial period, decreased at the end of the trial period, and kind of leveled off back to normal after the trial period, back to the normal range of where it was. So definitely shows an impact of the new layout. And then if you go to store 88, as we can see here, the final store, this is the trial period before, and then during, it just gradually increased, spiked completely up. Then at the end, it started to spike down, but after they switched back to the old layout, it plummeted again back to where it was before, back into the levels, performance levels before. So again, this is more evidence that the trial period, the new layout is definitely making a difference in chip sales. And then the final slide is the total customer chip transactions for the trial store versus the control store. And as you can see here, the trial store every month was outperforming the control stores. And it's basically my recommendation that they should implement the new layout going forward. So that completes the project for them. The next part 4, is the dashboard I built in Power BI, which is not part of this mock virtual internship, and I'll get into that in the next video.